Well, let me first wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving. It is always life-affirming to see people who do such good work for others. And at Thanksgiving, it's especially appreciated. There are so many people in need, and there are those who make sure that they have the blessings of this country, too. I want to thank everyone at Caldwell Temple's PATHHSEO Soup Kitchen for the great work they do. I want to especially thank the program director, Sandra Reyes, and thank you, Sandra, and the pastor of this great temple, Reverend Monty Witherspoon Brown, who also was a great colleague. You can join us. You can come on over. Sandra, you too. Come on over. Pastor, I want to tell you, you were an exceptional teammate there on the food line. We managed to get good rhythm going there. And it was an honor to meet so many good New Yorkers who happen to be hungry, happen to be struggling economically, and we're looking for a little bit of help as Thanksgiving is coming. And so it was an honor to join with so many good people, so many volunteers helping them out. I also want to thank for helping us on the line, and I want to congratulate him as well. New York State Assembly Member-elect Michael Blake. Michael, who is going to get sworn in at what hour? 5 o'clock today. As of 5 o'clock, I'll be calling him Assembly Member. Congratulations to you. We look forward to working with you on these issues and so many others. I want to thank colleagues from the administration, including our Director of Food Policy for the City of New York, Barbara Turk. I want to thank her for her great efforts. Everyone is working together on the front line of the battle against hunger. And here at this temple, they serve over 400 meals every Saturday. One house of worship, one neighborhood, over 400 meals every Saturday. This is happening in every borough, in every neighborhood, houses of worship of all different faiths, nonprofit organizations. This is a persistent challenge we face in our city. And it is striking proof of the inequality crisis. Too many New Yorkers are going hungry. 1.4 million New Yorkers are food insecure. That simply means they do not have enough resources for adequate food each and every day. They may have some good days, they're certainly going to have some bad days, but they don't have the security and the consistency that so many people expect in our society. 1.4 million New Yorkers don't have that. 1 in 5 of them are children. It's something we don't accept. It's something we're going to fight against with every tool we have. And we are so appreciative for the food pantries and the soup kitchens that we support and work with through the Emergency Food Assistance Program that the city sponsors. 489 food pantries and soup kitchens. That's another striking indicator of the depth of the problem. 489 soup kitchens and food pantries we support each year. From July to September this year, 2.7 million visits were paid to the food pantries supported by EFAP, 900,000 meals served in the soup kitchens supported by EFAP. It's an extraordinary need. And the fact is, it's very discouraging to see the depth of the problem, but what is encouraging is how many people are stepping up to meet it with every tool they have. Would you like a coat? Let's get her a coat. I realize it's going to be a long session. We have, unfortunately, in the midst of this challenge, experienced a setback at the federal level, as have cities all over the country, with the cuts in the SNAP program, the food stamp program, right in the middle of what is a sustained economic challenge for our people. These benefits were cut, and what has it led to? Longer lines at all the different charitable organizations that feed people. It's led to soup kitchens and food pantries that literally have had to turn away people for lack of resources. We can't afford to wait for Washington to get it right, because it's clear, sadly, they've been going in the wrong direction. So we have to do everything we can locally to address the challenge. And we believe the core of that is addressing income inequality in all its forms. People are hungry because they don't have good enough wages and benefits because the cost of housing is too high, and we're going at the core of those programs. All of the things that we're doing to raise wages and benefits through the action of city government, all the things we're doing to try and get people better skills so they can get better jobs they can actually feed a family on. We talked about that earlier in the week, what we're trying to do in terms of affordable housing over 10 years, enough for 500,000 people. These are the ways that we also address the hunger crisis. The best way to turn around the hunger crisis is to help more New Yorkers get good-paying jobs and an affordable place to live. The second approach we're using is to try and go at the challenge that the federal government has created by making the food stamp process in some ways more complicated than it needs to be. So we've instituted many reforms to streamline the process, make it easier for people to enroll or re-enroll. We want people who deserve food stamps to get them. We want them to stay with it. We want to make sure that they know they have a right to this assistance from the federal government. And we're finding ways to help people apply through their local community organizations, apply online, doing the kinds of things that simplify what is historically a complicated process. We're also reaching out to people to let them know if they've missed an appointment or missed an opportunity. The fact is that amongst our hungriest New Yorkers are our seniors. A lot of them face a host of challenges on top of hunger. We want to help them in particular to get onto the SNAP program or to re-enroll in the SNAP program. Our goal is to reach 100,000 seniors who are eligible. We've reached 24,000 so far. We want to get to 100,000 who are eligible and would benefit greatly from these SNAP benefits. So the city is going to do everything we have in our power, and we're then going to appeal to our allies in the nonprofit community like the New York City Coalition Against Hunger. Been a fantastic voice in this city for change, always keeping our attention on the need to use the resources we have to feed people. We've also had tremendous partnership with a lot of the organizations who help the homeless, who obviously are also facing hunger challenges. City is doing everything we can under the leadership of Homeless Services Commissioner Gilbert Taylor to help people get off the streets, get to shelter, get to good food. And we believe that that effort will be a crucial part of the equation, but we're also going to call upon our fellow New Yorkers to help in every way they can. There are a lot of people who want to volunteer. I'll talk about that in a moment. A lot of people who want to donate. Anyone who wants to help can call 311. If they have food to donate, if they want to donate resources, you'll also hear from Joel Berg about other ways people can get involved. With the city doing all we can, and with the federal government having stepped back from some of its responsibilities, everyday New Yorkers can help us with their time, their energy, their resources, with donations of food. We want to emphasize that. So we believe the job is not done until everyone has enough to eat. This will be a long road. That's the only standard that we can hold here. And that's what we will focus on every day. Again, for anyone who can contribute food, who can contribute money to support those who are hungry, they can call 311 and get connected to the best place to do that. For people who want to volunteer, and so many people this time of year want to give of themselves, want to help others, they can call 311 or go to our New York City service program, www.nycservice.org. Again, www.nycservice.org. Just want to say a few words in Spanish before I introduce a few of my colleagues. Feliz Día de Acción de Gracias a todos. Y gracias a todos en el comedor de Caldwell Temple y en los comedores de caridad y despensas de alimentos en toda la ciudad por su buen trabajo. Mi gobierno está haciendo todo lo posible para aumentar el acceso a programas de comida y para asegurar que ningún neoyorquino tenga hambre tanto durante la temporada de fiestas como durante todo el año. With that, I want to bring up Commissioner Steve Banks, the Human Resource Administration, a man whose job encompasses so many of the core pieces of the fight against hunger. He's been a tremendous advocate before he came into government. He's been focused on the issue of improving every day our efforts to fight hunger, and at HRA he's making a big difference. Commissioner Steve Banks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The kinds of work that's done here is really critical on the front lines of addressing hunger in the city. There's no question that we have food insecurity across the city. The mayor's program to address the need for living wages and the need for affordable housing is clearly the road to addressing the food insecurity in the city. And in the short run, we're doing everything we can to ensure that we have access to federal food stamp assistance for New Yorkers in all 5 boroughs. There have been a number of reforms that we've implemented in HRA in order to ensure that some of the bureaucratic barriers in the past to applying for assistance have been taken down. As the mayor indicated, we've conducted outreach to seniors who are receiving Medicaid but not federal food stamps to address the ability to connect them to those vital benefits. And we're implementing an outreach process for New York City Housing Authority tenants who have not been receiving food stamps to ensure that everyone who is eligible is receiving those benefits. And food stamps are such an important part of the effort to fight hunger, but they're also a very important part of the economic drivers of our communities. For every $1 of federal food stamps, it produces $1.80 in economic activity in the neighborhoods throughout the city. So it's a very important resource and tool that we have. We're very pleased to be working directly with the Coalition Against Hunger and Joel Berg and all the efforts together to address this very serious problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And again, this time of year, we think about those who are hungry. We think about those who are homeless. Our mission is to help anyone who's on the streets get to shelter and to help people from shelter into long-term solutions, long-term housing. And Gilbert Taylor is doing a great job as our Commissioner for Homeless Services, helping to reach more and more people, because that's also part of how we help solve the hunger crisis, is getting people to a place where they can get the support they deserve. Commissioner Gilbert Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To my colleagues at HRA, the Coalition Against Hunger, and all of those who are here today, I want to say how incredibly important this work is. And as we consider the correlation between poverty and hunger and homelessness, it's also interrelated. And so we at DHS are doing everything that we can to help all of those who are unsheltered, living on the streets, to come into shelter. And for the large shelter population that we currently have, we're taking 2 roads to really address that. The first is prevention, and really just making sure that everyone is aware of our home-based programs that can offer concrete assistance to any family or individual who is at risk of being displaced from their home. And the second is really targeting resources to help those who've been living in shelter the longest periods of time to exit to permanent housing. And so we join forces with all of those who are working on these issues to really take on the issue of inequality and to really focus our efforts on helping those who are in our shelters and those who are threatened with housing instability to stay out of shelter. So thank you all for the work that you do.
Thank you. Next, a voice in this city has been really one of the leading voices on what we have to do as a society to address hunger. And I have turned to him for years and years now for guidance on the ways we can do this better. I want to thank him for being such a powerful voice. Joel Berg, Executive Director of New York City Coalition Against Hunger.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for Sandra and everyone at Caldwell Temple. Some of you covered an event just about a year ago today when the then Mayor-elect de Blasio came, did a similar event, and pledged to do something serious about hunger. Let's be clear. He's done it. Expanding the living wage will reduce hunger. Increasing pre-K with free meals for kids paid for by the federal government will reduce hunger. The incredible advancements that HRA under Commissioner Banks is doing will decrease hunger. The only reason it's going up is that Washington has entirely pulled the rug out from the feet of low-income New Yorkers and low-income Americans. So I know sometimes there's a lot of focus on the political ups and downs, but I implore the press to focus on the substance of, in this agency, in this world, it's night and day difference than a year ago. This is the first time in 2 decades a mayor of New York City has made a substantive announcement about hunger in New York City, and I hope we can focus on that. I hope everyone can volunteer through the Mayor's Service Initiative by calling 311 or calling their website. Of course, we would welcome donations to the New York City Coalition Against Hunger or volunteering through us at www.nyccah.org. People can also contact City Harvest and the Food Bank and any one of the other hundreds of wonderful organizations like Caldwell Temple here. We can wipe out this problem, but it's going to need continued progressive leadership at every level of government, and we're thrilled, at least at the city level, we're getting that done. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, thank you very much, Joel. Finally, as he prepares to assume office, his last days as a civilian, and I want to welcome the Assemblyman who represents this community, Assemblyman, as of 5 p.m. today, Assemblymember Michael Blake.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Buenas tardes, damas y caballeros. There's a necessity for us to understand why we're here today, and we were grateful to the mayor. We're grateful to Monty, to Sandra, the entire team that have come here. But it's us understanding that people are hungry and they're hurting and they need help. They don't just need help around Thanksgiving time, and obviously we're excited to be here on today. They need help every day. And the work that is happening in terms of creating jobs, creating UPK, and creating affordable housing is helping those communities. This is a very personal issue for me. As some of you are aware, my family has battled homelessness before, and we have a family model that we went from no house in Jamaica to the White House in D.C. to the State House in Albany. But I recognize that we are not the anomaly. There are many of us who need help. And so we congratulate the work that's happening here today, but this is our responsibility now to continue to move forward. The great work that's happening at VIP Community Services, the great work we're seeing at Save Our Streets, this is an opportunity for us to strengthen the Bronx and show that there's more opportunities here. So, Mr. Mayor, we thank you for coming to the 79th District, for empowering the 150,000 residents of this district, the great work that's happening here, not just today, but every Saturday and every weekend. But let's be mindful that the work doesn't end after Thanksgiving. It has to continue even after that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And before we take questions, just, Michael, I want to help you in interpretation. Which Jamaica?
Jamaica West Indies.
Jamaica West Indies. And you were a staffer in the Obama administration before you ran for office yourself. I just want to link it all together. All right. Well, let's first take questions on this topic, and then we'll take off topic. On this topic, the hunger situation in this city. On topic. Yes?
Why is the homelessness population increasing in this city?
Well, I'll start, and I'm sure my colleagues have a lot to add. I think it's the overall economic dynamics that we have been facing. It's a situation where we are now experiencing the results of the Great Recession continuing. Even if we've seen some short-term economic improvement, it still is coming on the heels of years in which people were declining economically. Meanwhile, the cost of living has continued to go up here in the city, particularly for housing. So we've got a structural problem on our hands, and that's why it needs a structural solution. We have to address it by creating affordable housing, by creating jobs, by making sure the jobs pay better, by helping get people to those jobs who often have been left out of our economy. Anyone want to add? Gilbert?
Just to add to what the mayor said, it really is a matter of poverty. It really is a matter of people who cannot afford to live in New York City as we would want them to. And so to the extent that there's more affordable housing, to the extent that there are opportunities for better employment and high wage employment, all of that will help to stem the tide of new shelter entries and keep people in their homes.
On topic, yes.
Just curious if you agree with Mr. Burr's assessment that the city hasn't done
With whose assessment, I'm sorry?
Joel Burr's assessment that the city hasn't done anything substantive to battle hunger in 2 decades.
Well, I would say it differently. I have deep respect for Joel, but I would say it differently. I would say that we did not pursue all the avenues we could have in the past. I think some good things were done, but I think a lot of crucial opportunities were lost. A lot of the problem went under-addressed. And I don't think, I'm going to just follow on Joel's point here, I don't think the heart of the matter was addressed, which is an economic reality. So, look, in the previous administration, food stamp usage went up a lot, which I think was a great thing. I was very deeply involved in that. But not all elements of it were reached, as you hear. There were still things we could have done to reach more people. Obviously, I thought the fingerprinting dynamic, which went on for many years, was a huge mistake and kept a lot of people from food they deserved. But I think the bigger point is some of the structural issues were not addressed, and that's what we're trying to do.
Can I just say,
Please.
I
We're going to talk about you behind your back.
Clear that I did not say nothing happened. I did not say nothing happened in the previous 2 decades. I said this is the first time a mayor has personally made a substantive policy announcement on hunger, even though previous administrations may have done some things, not all of which were bad. Never once did the mayor embrace this as a problem and say it's my job to fix it. So I want to be clear. They did some good things, but not what's happening today.
Yes.
Mayor, yesterday Commissioner Banks testified to some of this same topic to the City Council. During his testimony, I think there was only one council member there, then maybe one other trickled in later. I'm wondering whether you think this is an issue that's not getting enough attention, or is there more attention from elected officials?
I don't think the problem is elected officials. I think as a society we have to address this question more. Obviously, this is something I worked on for years as chairman of the General Welfare Committee in the City Council. And I think because of the sheer extent of the problem, it's hard for people to focus on. It's a painful reality. I mean, quoting the number again so I get it right, 1.4 million New Yorkers who are food insecure, 1 in 5 are children. In some ways, when you think about a lot of the issues we focus on in public life, when you think a lot of the issues that get talked about in the media, you know, we often want a problem that has already an immediate solution. It's a human tendency. This one's huge and complicated and deep-seated. So I think a lot of people care. I don't think it gets enough examination in general, partly because it is so challenging, such a big fundamental challenge. But we're focused on it. You know, the whole team here is focused on it. And again, to pick up on Joel's point, I'm not going to be comfortable while there are people hungry in my city. It's just as comfortable as that, just as clear as that. I'm not going to believe we have completed our mission if there are people who are hungry. So we're trying to fight inequality writ large. We have a very substantial agenda. But within that, one of the simplest measures of whether we have a just society is if all our people have enough to eat. It's not like the food doesn't exist. It's not like the resources to pay for the food don't exist in our society as a whole. It's a baseline question. Are we going to feed all our people? And that's what we are committed to. On topic. On topic, going once, going twice, off topic. Off topic.
Mr. Mayor, I want to get your thoughts and your reactions to what happened last night in Missouri on the lack of an indictment, the resulting protests with some violence, and what your concerns might be about a similar situation here in the wake of whatever might happen with the Aaron Carter case.
A couple of different points. Let's talk about the human piece first, because it's the most important piece. A family lost their son. They're in a lot of pain. They've been in a lot of pain ever since the tragedy occurred. In the end, what we all try to do is alleviate people's suffering. And so the first thing we should think about here is the Brown family and what they continue to go through. And the second thing we should think about is the wishes of the Brown family, which were really clearly stated. They are the ones who have suffered the most, and they said we have to make a lot of changes, but not through violence. So it's a sad day for America that people chose to pursue violence when it's quite evident that not only did the family not want it, it's not going to get anyone anywhere. We have to make profound changes in our society. We have to make profound changes in our city. But they will not be achieved through violence. They'll be achieved through a peaceful protest. They'll be achieved through legislation. They'll be achieved through elections. And this city actually is an example of that, because the number of stops is down, because marijuana arrests are going down, because the police force is being retrained, because we have an inspector general, because we have a reinvigorated CCRB, all because the people demanded it through peaceful means. That's how real change occurs. So I hope that lesson will be learned in this process. I don't make it a point of critiquing the judicial process. I don't think that's productive. But I think there's a much bigger point here, that we have to make change. Here in this city, we've started, much more to do. And I think we have to remind people that one of the things we're proud of in the city, and you saw it last night, is there will be protests as part of a democracy. But in this city, we respect that. We allow protests to happen the right way, and generally speaking, in a way that really fosters nonviolence and people participating in their society in the right manner. So that's where we're going to remain focused.
Probably more than most people in the city, you know how hard Commissioner Bratton works on behalf of New Yorkers. I was just curious what your reaction was seeing him splattered with that blood-like paint.
Well, two very different points. One about the perpetrator and another about the commissioner. I mean, it's absolutely a cowardly and inappropriate act for anyone to assault a public servant who's, any public servant, but particularly a public servant who's doing so much good. I found it fundamentally inappropriate. Again, if someone wants to express their opinions, they can, but that was a very cowardly act. Thank God no harm came to the commissioner. A couple of officers did experience some negative effects from what hit them, and they did go to the hospital. Thank God they're okay, and they were released. But second, I want to say it's a measure of the leadership of Commissioner Bratton that he was at the site supervising the situation and was absolutely unflappable throughout the whole thing. He called me afterwards, cool in the saddle as always, and I admire that. Other questions? Yes.
The budget, if I may. You unveiled your midterm today with no layoffs. What kind of cuts are you looking for? Is it every agency? And what do you mean by administrative efficiencies?
I think in government in general, there's always better things we can do. There's always money we can save for the taxpayer. There's always more efficient ways of doing things. It's a given. I spent a lot of time in government. I think anyone who really understands government would say it's an unfinished work at all times. There's, always progress to be made. And if you can't find some better ways of doing things, you're not trying hard enough. So that's point one. We're saying to every agency, look for ways to do things better, look for ways to save money, look for where our priorities should be, because sometimes we have a program that's not working. The letter says very clearly, if a program's not working, let's end it, or a program's not working well enough, let's phase it out. So I think that's one part of what we're saying. I think the second part of what we're saying is think about what we're trying to achieve. Think about the mission we've set forward in our platform, and make sure the work of your agency is aligning properly to it. Because, for example, a lot of times you find in government there's a program in place from a previous administration with different values, that maybe were a priority for that administration, aren't a priority for us, and we don't find it to be effective. Equally, you might have something that was left over from a previous administration or several administrations ago that's working great, and you want to make sure you keep. But the point is to constantly look at it with a critical mind. So we've said to every agency, look for savings. And we said to every agency, evaluate whether your programs are working. If there's some, if they are not good enough, that we should change. Michael.
Mr. Mayor, I wonder, did you learn of the grand jury's decision like others did by television? Were you watching the scene in Ferguson last night? And I'm curious, were you with your wife, with your son, did you have a conversation about what was unfolding on
I found out from various members of my staff, saw some of the footage, saw a lot more of it this morning. Obviously, very, very disturbing. No, there was not a formal family discussion. I think, again, I hope we reflect upon this as so many different pieces of this, but one of them is there's a way to encourage peaceful protest and remind people that that's the only effective way to create change. And obviously, it's been a very tortured path in Ferguson. This is not news to anyone from the very beginning of this crisis. We approach policing and the relationship between police and community very differently here in New York City. So I was very, very sad. I think everyone feared something like this might happen. And lo and behold, it did.
Mayor Blasio, you promised to be a transparent mayor. There's a DOI report today that your office didn't allow the press into a meeting. How do you feel about this? What do you want to say about
it? It was a mistake. I think that by definition, we were in a public building. The media should have been allowed. I don't think that for that kind of public event, there were lots of people there, absolutely. And I think that was a mistake by my team, and a mistake we won't make again.
Mayor, I was wondering if you could speak. Last week you said New Yorkers shouldn't rush to connect all the dots between the Eric Garner incident, the incident in Ferguson, and of course the latest incident with Ty Gurley. And I'm just wondering, it seems that some people are connecting those dots, whether they be activist groups in New York, elected officials. Reverend Al Sharpton last night spoke about how the three are related. And I'm just wondering what you think of that perception from the public that these are part of a larger trend.
I just have a different view. I don't fail to understand why people would. I just have a different view. I think each and every incident is different. I think the underlying issues we're facing are what we really need to focus on. And we have to reform the relationship between police and community. We have to do it very deeply. We have to do it all over the country. And obviously in New York City, we've embarked on a very intense program of reform and a fast program of reform. The stops are down. As you can see, immediately there's been a huge reduction. In fact, last week, a 60% reduction, 6-0, in the number of marijuana arrests. The retraining of the police force is unprecedented. The new Inspector General, the reinvigorated CCRB. I mean, these are the kinds of things that will lead to lasting change. This is what the discussion should be about. The individual incidents are tragic, and we feel them so deeply, and everyone needs to be fully investigated, needs fully to be adjudicated through the court process. But the heart of the matter is, are we changing the way we do things? In this city, we are changing the way we do things. We have a lot more work to do. And that's what I'm solely focused on, is making those changes and making them as effectively and quickly as possible.
Time for a couple more,
Do you have
please.
one? Oh, she had your question. Okay.
About the new parole center coming to Gowanus. There have been some protests within the community. Wondering if you talked about it at all, what your feelings are about it. You've heard the concerns of some of those residents, and do you think that those are valid? Is it something the city needs to deal with?
I don't know enough of the details, to be honest with you. Obviously, I know the neighborhood very well, but I don't know enough of the details of this particular proposal. So I'd like to reserve judgment until I can get you a more complete answer.
Totally unrelated follow-up.
Please. At least you admit it.
Tomorrow's calling for some pretty miserable weather.
Yes.
One of the heaviest travel days of the year. How is the city getting prepared? Can you give us some of the details?
Sure. Well, I think we all have learned a lot this year about the topic of snow. Our Sanitation Commissioner, Catherine Garcia, has been talking over the last few days with City Hall about the preparations. She's a very effective operational leader, and she and her team are ready. We have very substantial reserves in terms of salt. We have our equipment ready. Everyone's quite aware of the fact that this could hit one of the times you'd least like it to hit, on Thanksgiving Day. We don't know enough about the exact extent of the storm, but I've been saying to everyone, Riley, inside City Hall, remember from our experiences last time, the numbers can change very rapidly. And, the Weather Service does the best job it can to give us a projection, but there's always a certain amount of give in that projection. So, what could seem like 6 to 8 inches can suddenly turn into a foot of snow, and you have to be ready for that. So we're in a ready position. And we have our personnel ready, and we'll judge literally hour by hour as we get closer. The one good news story is, if we do experience this on, late Wednesday into Thursday, Friday, those are days that school obviously will be off on Thursday and Friday, and that's a bit of a blessing.
Time for one or two more, please.
Yeah, I got one, and I'll get two.
Question on the budget again. So is this new approach that you're taking to agency cuts, where you're not asking for targeted amounts and you're not giving agencies a deadline, is that something you'll also be doing if you have an economic downturn?
Well, on the deadline point, I'd just like to clarify. There's obviously a budget process starting, and everyone's quite aware of that, and we mean them to work with us in the existing budget process, the next milestone being January.
So is this still the approach you're going to take if, the city faces economic hard times? And right now, the city budget's in pretty good health.
Well, I mean, you know my aversion to hypothetical questions. I will simply say we know there's a whole range of tools you can use if there is an economic downturn, if our fiscal health is challenged. And we know what those are, and we're ready to use them if it comes to that. But right now, I think we're in a more foundational place. We want people to look at their agencies and decide if there's some things that aren't working well enough, there's some things that should be changed. Over time, if we have to get into more of a numerical exercise, we certainly know what that looks like. But this is actually about looking at the foundations of our agency and decide if changes need to be made.
Based on everything that you've learned over the last few months about the Eric Garner case, what are your thoughts on whether or not the case should end in criminal charges?
Again, I don't pretend to know the facts of an investigation. I think it's very, very important for people in public life to respect the investigatory process, the grand jury process, and any other investigations or follow-up that may be undertaken. If the federal government, for example, gets involved, that is a distinct part of our government. I respect all of those efforts. Our job is always to cooperate. It's just not appropriate for someone in my position to critique a judicial outcome. I don't believe in that. But look, there's a lot of effort being put into making sure there is a thorough investigation and an appropriate outcome.
What's on the menu for Thanksgiving at Gracie? Are you going to have it at Gracie?
It will not be at Gracie. I'll be in Connecticut at my cousin's house, and there will be turkey. It's very traditional, which I'm fully in favor of. I'm a progressive in all matters except for Thanksgiving dinner. I am a traditionalist when it comes to Thanksgiving dinner. So I know there will be turkey, stuffing. I believe there will be both apple and pumpkin pie. I feel very enthusiastic about this opportunity.
very hungry, Mayor.
Yes.
Can I ask about the convention? I just wanted to know how many businesses are going to have to be sort of relocated or shut down because of security concerns. There was a report today in Politico that's going to happen, I suppose, around Atlantic Avenue and Plaza Valley.
I don't start with that assumption. I think that is a process we go through. Look, as we said yesterday, there is going to be now, over the next, give or take, 2 months, a very intense process working with the Democratic National Committee on their contract process so they can weigh all 3 cities apples to apples. They'll look at everything. They'll look at the resources we can bring to bear. They'll look at the security dynamics, logistics, how we work with the surrounding communities and businesses. We made clear in the gathering yesterday, where a lot of those community organizations and businesses were represented, that we want to work with them to maximize the positive impact of the convention. We think there's going to be a huge positive impact. And from folks from the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce and from the Restaurant Association, we're enthusiastic as can be at the prospect of all the business that would come in through the convention. So our job is to maximize economic opportunity, minimize any situation where there would have to be any disruption of business. But that's going to be a process that plays out in the details. One thing we can say for sure, NYPD is the best security partner that the DNC could have, and they'll know what we need, and they'll know how to make it work as flexibly as possible. So I think we're going to have a very, very positive economic impact on the surrounding community. Thanks, everyone.